Good morning. Can you hear me? Does it work? Yes, it works. Okay. My name is Jens Freeman Hansen. I'm the director of Helsingør Theater, and in many years we've had a fantastic cooperation with Dunkers Kulturhus about the International Street Theater Festival Passage. And it's a little bit in that relation we're here today in order to discuss sustainability in relation to performing arts in public space. And I've been looking so much forward to this and would like to welcome you all to take part in all the conversations and everything that is going on. It's us who are going to learn from these sessions. But I don't want to say anything more. I want to give the word to Aslak, who will be our host today, and looking so much forward to seeing you around during the day. Thank you.
Please stay, Jens. Yes, because thank you for inviting. Thank you for taking this initiative. My name is Aslak. I'm a member of the board in Helsingør Theater, but on a daily basis I work in the news industry with journalists, with editors. And in that industry, there's a concept that we are self-sufficient because we're in it for the greater good. So we report on sustainability, but we don't act sustainable. Is it the same with the theater scene in Denmark?
I think for my generation, and being one of the conservative boomers around in the business, I think it can be a little bit like that. But it's impossible not to be curious and a little bit listening, because if you want to work with the best artists that are around, you have to take these issues seriously, and you have to change something in order to be able to welcome some of the great projects that will happen in the arts of the future. So we have to change, all of us, for sure.
So this is a place to start up a conversation. We might be left with more questions than answers, or what do you expect from today? You were here yesterday also, in Helsingør.
I was so confused yesterday.
Okay.
The people who were there can confirm that for sure, because I really got into something I didn't know much about. It was very much focused on digital, on other formats of working with theater, other definitions of theater, which is very, very interesting, but a lot of it is also very new to me. So I expect also today to be a little bit confused, more than I was when I came, hopefully, because it's a very good point for change, I would say. If you're kind of settled on what you want to do, I think it's a bit concerning.
Okay, thank you, Jens, and thanks for inviting. And you're with us all day.
All day.
All day. Let me see your hands. How many of you were in Helsingør on this conference yesterday? Okay, that's a lot. So you are actually the ones to welcome me here, right? Let's have a look at the program. Now we are just getting started. We left a slack for some fairy jam. You know, we have a confused director at the theater. So that was planned, that was all planned. That was a gimmick. No, it wasn't. We're going to have a conversation on stage this morning, and we will like to include you after some presentations. We have 3 presentations. During the presentations, you will be able to send us remarks, questions with your mobile phone. I'll show you how to do that, but that's this morning. It's in here. We are going to hear 3 very different presentations. This one, called "What Are Our Burning Issues," is the panel where we'd like to include you as much as possible. Then there's a lunch break, and after that, it's your take or my take on sustainability. Those are breakout sessions, and in advance, our crew has divided you into the teams we would like you to the breakout sessions we would like you to participate. If you would like another breakout session to participate in, please come forward and we'll swap. But please don't just everybody run to the. We will give you the lists during lunch so that you can see. They put me on this one. I'd rather be there. So can we fix it somehow? Because it would be a pity if some of the sessions, which are all of very high quality, is only for one person. I mean, so let's see if we can work that out. Let's see if there are any more of the practical stuff. Yeah, if you are seeing tonight's performance, please register. It's on a first come, first served basis, and there's a limited amount of tickets. So please go to the registration booth and register there. I don't know the performance, so could we see some of the Elsinore Theatre's staff here put up their hands? So if you'd like to know more about the performance, go to one of us, one of them. Jens saw it. So go to Jens if you're not sure whether to join or not. What else do we have? Yeah, if you're with us at the picnic tomorrow, it would be very nice if you know it in advance, that you could also tell us that the picnic in Gröningen here in Helsingborg, register for that one too. Okay, in the afternoon, those are breakout sessions. We'll introduce you to them after lunch. During the day, I'll actually ask you to take out your mobile phones. Usually in the theater, they are shamed out, these little digital, oh yeah. But you're able to join us without. I know they're considered a pain, but let's see if we can use them constructively, actually, in a way. So I've created, this is a Swedish piece of software called Mentimeter. Johnny is the founder and CEO, and it is GDPR-wise, it's very compliant to Scandinavian standards, and we are not going to sell your data. We're not able to, actually. So it's anonymously when you're chipping in here, but I'll try to make an exchange with you during the day so that we get in some data here, we get in your inputs, because whenever someone's speaking on stage, you might have an input, and you'll be able to chip in here. And the first question for today is quite simple. Are you feeling green today? I'm obviously, maybe even a little overdressed. So at menti.com, you register with that code you see up there and answer the question to a certain degree. Now rather blue, maybe red. One of you are definitely. This is just to test that this Mentimeter stuff actually works. There is a Wi-Fi that you can chip into. Now, speaking of conversation, what happened here? I asked you to take out your mobile phone. Everybody's now staring down their mobile phone. Did we start a conversation? Oh, so maybe I should ask you in another way. This time, I'd like you to answer not on your own behalf, but answer on the person's behalf sitting next of you. And this question is a serious one, actually, because we're here to discuss sustainability in the Greta Thunberg way, not in the Gro Harlem Brundtland way, which is Gro Harlem Brundtland report was both on environmental issues, was both on social issues, and both economical issues. We are not to tell you not to discuss social issues, not to discuss economical, but our scope is the environmental issues. But please feel free to also include other aspects of sustainability. So this first little exercise, I'll give you a few minutes to do this, is to find out what's your experience with sustainability in arts, not only performing arts, that could be other kind of arts, not only outdoor arts, stage arts, and discuss with the person sitting next to you, and then see what's your experience. I'll leave you 200 seconds for that. It's out of 100 points. Okay. From up here, it felt conversational. Seemingly, there are some experience in the audience with the environmental aspect. Some of you have none. And this is actually, I like these answers because it's, well, there's a diversity. Almost 30 of you, now 30 of you, did send in an answer. Is there anything here to surprise you? What would you say, Jens? Are you surprised in any way? Jakob, we're going to invite you on stage in a few minutes, maybe just 1 minute. When you see this, are you surprised in any way?
I'm surprised about two things. First of all, that the environmental aspect is at the forefront, which makes my heart go, yes. But I'm also kind of surprised that economical is so low. And since many of us probably today here are working with performing arts, are working in the arts industry, I think it's kind of crucial that we get to think about the economical sustainability and put that higher up, so we also ensure that we, as we work, are working sustainable also financially, because there is a tendency that that the arts, oh, but you're doing it because you love it, so we don't have to pay you so much for it. We should also change that mindset within ourselves. So, yeah, I would love if I come back next year that economical is a little higher.
Okay, we might as well invite you on stage,
Yes.
Jakob.
Yeah.
Please come forward.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just gonna place this one here. Thank you.
Your device.
My device. I
Okay.
want to be without a device.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jakob Teilgaard,
Yeah.
you're an actor,
Yes.
but now, what you told me was that being an actor meant that you're not even able to FaceTime with your kids, because you're performing at night, and that's when they have the spare time. So you started doing something else.
Yeah.
You're going to make a sufficient presentations.
Yeah.
But can you, in 2 words, 2 lines, describe what is Bæredygtig Scenekunst nu, sustainable stage arts now?
It is, wow, to say that in 2 lines. It is actually becoming a father 2 years ago to a little baby daughter and realizing that I have to give something, I have to pass everything I can on to the next generation. Yeah, I guess that would be the shortest version.
The shortest version.
Yeah.
And while we swap to your presentation on this screen,
Yeah.
I put a keynote question, so to say, for you to answer. Because we had a discussion last week
Yes.
about these things, and the question is, should performing arts always integrate with sustainability? And that's for you to give an answer now, and then we will afterwards have Jakob's presentation. I will ask Jakob to stay seated on stage here during the next presentations, and then slowly we will form a panel up here, and you will be able to discuss afterwards with the panel. If you have questions during the presentations, you may put them in Mentimeter, or you may just save them for later. Okay, Jakob.
Yes.
This is something which divides the audience, so to say.
Yes.
See, it's not that I'm a journalist, but I I told you I was working in the news industry, and we love dividing people. You know, if there's a conflict, then we have a sustainable business. So conflicts, yes. Oh, this is your talking point, Jakob.
This is interesting.
50-50. Okay.
I feel like this is some kind of election, and I get to, you know, make this rally to make that one over there go 100%. But
Okay.
let's see. That's always the interesting thing. Should performing arts always integrate with sustainability?
With capital letters.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what Jakob has to say. I'll swap to your presentation, Jakob.
Yes, thank you.
And leave the is it called a clicker?
It's called a clicker. Let's call it a clicker. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And if it's okay with you, Aslak, I'm probably going to be walking a little bit around because.
That's not up to me.
No, that's not. Oh, that's great. Okay. Wow. In a way, it feels so formal in here already. It's like I feel like I'm a part of a TEDx talk or something like that. It's like, what is this? In a way, it kind of motivates me because I think this topic is so crucial and important. And since I'm an actor, I like to perform, and we have a stage, we have a beautiful scenario, we've got you. So I hope you're in for a treat. At least I am. I feel very engaged right now. So yeah, as Aslak also said, I tried to translate what our name is, our interest organization. So in English, it would be Sustainable Performing Arts Now. And do note the now, because there is this activist side to it, because this is urgent. We need to do something now. Today, I want to give a short presentation on what we do and what we can see are the challenges in the Danish performing arts industry, but also I want to pass on things to you for you to work with in your praxis. I don't know what praxis would be translated into. What? In your praxis. Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah. And get ready. We've got 20 minutes, and I got 15 slides. So buckle up, because it's going to be like this, and I'm going to talk fast, but it's okay because this is urgent. So first, maybe you know Madeleine Kate McGovern. If you don't, please look her up. She's from Denmark. She is so interesting. She just last Monday at Copenhagen Stage Theatre Festival, she gave a fantastic speech about the IPCC report, where she made a poem about what it was about. And one of the key things in the IPCC report, the UN climate report, is one of the main reasons for not being further ahead with the green transition in Europe is due to the absence of arts and culture in all aspects of the process. This is important because we hold the key in this transition. We who create art and culture. In Denmark in 2019, according to the statistics of Denmark, 2.9 million people went to the theaters in Denmark. And this is a country with, I guess, 6 million people. So 2.9 people. I know that there are people who come again. Yes, so it's not 2.9 million. But still, that's a lot of people going, in this case, just to the theaters. So we have a huge potential to change the talk and the minds of the audiences. And if we can imagine a sustainable future and we can present these narratives on stage, we can accelerate this transition. Because in a way you could say that if we look at the climate clock, the time is 12:05 on that clock. We are really, it's too late already, so we have to do everything we can. So we need to step up to our game and be proud of what we do and see how we can integrate sustainability in all aspects of what we do. So, first of all, do you note the funny thing? Because we look at pictures, yes, I'm wearing the same shirt. And also we look like Limahl or some 80s band. I love this picture, it's wonderful. I don't know what happened, but it's great. This is Christian, my partner in Bæredygtig Scenekunst nu. And these are just, I love that they're all number one. Look at that. This is beautiful. So they're not ranked in hierarchy. But this is what we do. We do political lobby work. We push the right people on the stomach. That's a Danish expression, which is very urgent because we can see in the performing arts industry in Denmark that we as cultural workers, we are ready for the transition, but we are waiting for our leaders and the political side of it to step up and take some decisions because we are ready. I can recall being a child sitting in my parents' car covered in smoke, cigarette smoke. This is not how it is today. And if you ask a 5-year-old child today, they would be like, huh, smoking in the car? No. And why did that stop? Because government and legislation created a new space. This is what we have to look into, especially in Scandinavia, but also in the Baltic region. If we look to the UK, they are already ahead in sustainability. I have to mention Julie's Bicycle, an organization from the UK, who the last 15 years have been working with the transition, the sustainable transition in all of cultural sector in the UK. One interesting thing here is that they are co-working with what's called Arts Council England, which can be compared to the national cultural funds in Scandinavia. So if you happen to be a cultural institution in the UK and you want to apply for funds at the Arts Council England, you have to measure your carbon footprint in order to get funding. So it doesn't matter whether you want to make a show about climate or climate change or something else, you have to measure your climate footprint. That's what we want to see in Denmark as well. Then we work with the sustainable change of organization and operation, and we work very nitty-gritty with sustainable theater production, how to do it, you know, from day to day, how do we actually do things. I have to mention our website, Bæredygtig Scenekunst.nu, where you can find loads of guides, free guides on sustainable theater production, sustainable scenography, sustainable touring, all that stuff. And I know it's in Danish, I'm sorry, but if you only speak English, then look to Julie's Bicycle and you can find a lot of similar guides there, and they are for free as well. The 4 largest areas of emission, and emission that is carbon footprint. The 4 largest areas of emission in the performing arts industry is scenography and materials. What kind of materials are we using? It's buildings and operations, it is touring, and it is audience travel. And I want to focus on the last one right now because that is the interesting one. I know it could also be interesting to focus on touring because many of us are touring. And I had the pleasure of talking to some of you guys today who are doing slow tour. You traveled from Ireland to Cyprus in 12 days with train. I love this. This is also the changing of a mindset of not always having to accelerate, doing new stuff. It's about slowing down. So it also has probably an effect on you physically and mentally as individuals. It's like, let's slow down. Maybe. Let's talk about that later. Yeah, okay. But audience travel is one of the large emitters as well. And in a way we could say we don't, it's not really our responsibility how audience come to our shows. But in a way you could say, yes it is. Actually it very much is. And if we can provide new solutions for the audience of how to travel, we should. So for instance, I was at Theatertreffen, a large festival in Berlin 3 weeks ago, and where I had some conversations there. And the funny thing was that when you bought a ticket there for a show, you had 2 hours of free ride with the public transport prior and after the show. That's a great idea. So we have to make new collaborations with public transport and stuff like that in order to provide these solutions. This is also something I want to talk about because what you're looking at here is a declaration of intent that we created with the Danish theater member organization called Dansk Teater, which represents 81 theaters in Denmark. They wanted to put focus on sustainability, and we were like, yes, let's make some rules, let's move fast. And they were like, no. We cannot do that because it's an organization for everybody and none should be excluded. So we had to go soft. But if you really dive into the climate question, you get this thing of like, we have to move now. So I called up the CEO from Julie's Bicycle, Alison Tickle, and I said, what can we do? Because we have to move now. We have a huge opportunity. 81 theaters are possibly ready to go into this transition. And she said, look at it as a staircase with steps. You have to take one step at a time. So we created this letter of intent that 40 Danish theaters have signed now, which is a political text stating that the climate crisis is the most burning issue we have of our time. But also it gives, within 8 focus areas, clear action points of where to start, how to start, because we have to move away from talking about it into doing it. So we have a long list there, and it's available at Dansk Teater's website, and it is not only for Dansk Teater's members, it's for everybody, and you're very welcome to go in there, sign it, and hang it up on a wall for your employees at where you work, so they also get encouraged to work faster. Again, we have this 80s look going on, but what you're looking at here is the climate wall, which is a part of a campaign we've just been doing. The climate wall is this installation that has been touring around Denmark. As an audience, when you come to see a theater show, you get to put a dot of how you transported yourself. And also on the other side of the wall, you get to, a little bit like the Mentimeter, you get to very analog place a dot of how worried you are about climate. And this is a way of starting the conversation with the audiences. We did this campaign called Rethink Scenekunst Nu, where we had the chance to create a carbon calculator specifically for the performing arts scene in Denmark. We worked very closely with Julie's Bicycle, who already have the carbon calculator called Creative Green Tools. We worked very closely together with Theatre Green Book, which I also want you to note down and look up on the web, because Theatre Green Book is a very thorough guide on how to create sustainable theatre productions. And it's thorough in that sense that it states at what time in the process you should take the crucial decisions, because there are crucial decisions to be taken, but it's really like a blueprint of what to do, what when. And then we worked with it's called Energi- og Erhvervsstyrelsen in Denmark, who has the Danish emission factors, because everybody can right now use Creative Green Tools from Julie's Bicycle, but it has the UK emission factors. So you can't really use it in Denmark because it won't give you the right picture of what your carbon footprint is. You have to use the national factors. So right now we are trying to, together with Acetite Sweden, to translate this carbon calculator we created to Swedish as well, with Swedish factors. Yeah. Just a quick view on how this carbon calculator works, because there are a lot of carbon calculators around, and many of them are very complex. And it's kind of difficult to go into this, but we realized that if you really are to change your carbon footprint, first of all, you should know what your carbon footprint is. We did some carbon footprint calculating with the theater, a small theater called Mærkværk, and with one production, and they realized that transportation was a huge part of their carbon footprint. So the next production they created, they changed their behavior on transportation. So they hired an electric car. They changed all their deliveries to only ride around on bike. So they changed their behavior because they knew what their baseline was. So if you are to use this carbon calculator that is also for free, you can put in your theater. You can write, if you have a building you reside at, you can write that down as well. And then you can put up an event or a production that you want to measure on. Then you get to measure on energy, water, and waste, and transportation, public transportation, the audience transportation, your own transportation, but also on materials, which is kind of interesting, because it's interesting also to look at scenography and all that stuff. But what is most important, here it comes, it is the climate initiatives, because more people know more, and what we realized in Denmark in the performing art industry is that there are actually a lot of people out there doing a lot of amazing stuff, but they don't get to share it because they were lacking a platform to share it on. So this is the really interesting part. So when you enter the platform, you get to see all the climate initiatives that other theaters have placed in there. And the basic idea is that you just copy-paste the best ideas and you implement them and you use them. And you're free to just give a call to whoever placed that climate initiative in there and go like, what did you do? Can we do the same? So this is really about open source, about sharing. Here are the areas that we're looking into with the climate initiatives. These are the same 8 areas of the letter of intent we created. You can have a short look at it, but these are basically, we carved out different areas we can see. Here we can put in an effort. And my best advice to you is Choose one if you want to work with sustainability. Don't choose all 8. You'll break the neck in the work process. Choose one, and then next year you can add one. Yeah. I'm gonna skedaddle fast through this because, yeah, I know, the good thing is that tomorrow we're having this climate salon that you're all invited to as well here, and we can dive into these slides here. But this is where I want to go to. What can you do? Learn more about sustainable theater productions through the free guides I mentioned from our website. Realize which sustainable actions you are already doing, because you might already be doing a lot. And the thing is about sustainability is that it's not that sexy. It's kind of difficult. It's kind of limiting, and you go like, oh, we really have to turn this thing around. We have to make it desirable and fun to do. And the good thing is, if you can boost your self-esteem from the get-go, it's like, okay, we're already doing something. So if you can carve out what you're already doing, you go like, okay, we're already on the way, and then you have more motivation to carry on further. Decide what climate initiatives you want to implement in your work, and most of all, share knowledge, best practice, and case studies with each other. This is the most important thing, and this is also what we're going to do tomorrow at the Climate Salon. We're going to share what we already know. And I promise you, every time we do these climate salons, people go like, wow, I got this great idea from that person or this person, and I realized we're already ahead. So, yeah. I think the last thing I want to say is that I'm an actor, and one of the things before starting Bæredygtig Scenekunst nu, I was also telling stories about climate on stage. And the final note I want to give here is that it's about engaging people. So we had a show called Democracy that played around the country at the town halls out where the actual democracy takes place. And one part of the show, I go in on stage and I go like, I can't do this show anymore. Please stop, everybody. I'm not an actor anymore. I'm just Jakob. I can't wait for the politicians anymore to do something about the climate, so now I'm going to do something myself. And then I asked the audiences, what should I do? Somebody said, be a vegetarian. Somebody said, stop flying. And then I went around and I asked them, okay, you said I should be a vegetarian. If we are to make a climate agreement, we should be 2 persons, right? And then everybody laughed, and the person went like, yes, okay. And they agreed. We had a picture taken, we made the call and said, now we have an agreement. And then every night we made a shared agreement with all of the audiences. The very first night, I was kind of shocked that it was kind of difficult to agree on anything. I think we agreed on not using plastic bags anymore. I was like, God damn it, the world is gonna end. But now to the point, the good thing is that 3 days later into the tour, we were in Aarhus. And in Aarhus, then I could ask the audience and I could go like, yesterday in Copenhagen, we agreed on 4 meat-free days per week. What can you do in Aarhus? And they were like, we are better than Copenhagen. Yes, 5, 5, 5. And so this is just to say that we can take sustainability, which can be kind of not the winning cause, and turn it into something fun if we do things like this, basically. I hope I inspired you. I will shut my mouth now, but thank you very much. Yeah. I'll sit.
But please don't keep silent, and you will be able to have a conversation with Jakob later on. But if you're comfortable with staying on stage now that we have this lounge and that we have a stage, we'll leave you here and invite the next speaker, who's Signe Meisner Christensen, on stage, and I'll swap to her key question now, or the key question that you are going to ask. Signe, please come forward. And before we take that question, should I introduce you? That's me trying to, maybe the gesture is not that obvious. Okay, come here, Signe. Ta-da, Signe, please. Are you a researcher?
Yes, I am a researcher.
You are a researcher. Yeah. Okay, so I got it right.
Yeah.
Because you're not at a university right now.
No, I'm not.
No.
I'm affiliated with the Aalborg University, but I'm not I'm not on a contract.
No, okay.
Yeah.
And you're mainly concerned with the performance arts, is that right?
Yeah, I guess I have a more kind of expanded idea of what that includes because I come from the visual arts, and for me, performance and performativity is something that is not only about performance art, it's actually something that is a key point in all arts at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
The key question for the audience, I'm not sure that you are aware that what I actually asked them, but have a look. Is sustainability in arts a necessary evil? To what degree? And you please answer for the person next to you, sitting next to you, because we had an alike discussion last week about this, but let's see what the audience says. Is it a necessary evil? To a high degree or not at all? And remember that if you like, you may comment or send us questions in the Mentimeter tool. There is a tab to open, and then just send the questions, or we'll take them live afterwards. It's pretty much in the middle so far. Signe, are you going to touch upon this question?
All these questions about sustainability and the arts, I think they are can be difficult to answer because sustainability can be many things. And as Jakob was telling us about sustainability from a kind of an organizational perspective, and from all these multiple different aspects that have to do with how you bring down emissions and so on. But then sustainability is also about, as I'm going to talk about, something maybe more intrinsic to the arts. And so that's all. I always think it's very difficult to figure out what's really, what's the assumption in the question about sustainability, and that makes it hard to answer.
And maybe I put the question in a wrong way, as you had asked. Is sustainability and arts a potential? But I'll leave it to you now, and swap to your presentation and leave the stage for you solely. And you just click on.
Yeah.
Do you need a place for your paper?
A bit.
Okay, so
yeah. If we can
on.
share.
Yeah, no problem. Here and now. Your presentation is on now.
Unlike Jakob, I'm going to read the paper.
Okay, is it possible for you to put it here, or will you just keep it?
Fine.
Okay, great.
So, when talking about art and sustainability, the discussion is sometimes taken very literally as a question of how the arts may contribute to cut down on CO2 emissions or raise awareness about environmental issues. So in such a preliminary framing, however, easily turns art, or can turn art from one point of perspective into a tool of something else. And it also, for that reason, it also sometimes provokes critique from actors in the art field, that the key value of art is actually that of artistic freedom and not to be a tool of something else. And that's, what is unique for artistic processes is that they are geared to a fundamental questioning and imaginative exploration of worlds and phenomena, and therefore art is not always easily aligned with such an idea of sustainability as providing solutions and influencing people to change habits. When addressing the question of how performative art practices can intervene into debates about the present global environment and its crisis in a meaningful way, the question, I will argue in this presentation, has to be posed differently. Climate emergency and the drastic reduction of biodiversity globally have provoked the radical awareness that we humans are not exceptional, that we are in fact part of nature-human technological connections of which we do not play a privileged role. But still the modern separation of human beings from nature is so ingrained in our bodies that we have difficulties in unlearning this knowledge. The visual theorist Nicholas Mirtsuev expresses this by saying that the anthropocentric idea of human-nature relations has been built into our senses to the degree that it determines our perception of the world. This means that confronting the ecological crisis is not merely a problem-solution situation. It is also, and I would argue more fundamentally, a perceptual, aesthetic, and imaginative challenge. Because performance art deals with sensual, embodied being and acting in the world, it is a field that holds a great potential for relearning the relations that define our connectedness to the world and to the biosphere. In terms of outdoor performance art, such an endeavor, I will argue, plays out in relation to three basic components, and that is, as I try to illustrate up here, body, action, and place. These elements together make up key aesthetic features in performance art, and they hinge upon shared understandings of what a body, what action, and what a place is. So what I'll do in the following is to point to how these three terms are being reimagined through artistic practices today. So, this is a bit blurred. What does reconnecting to the world mean in relation to the body? Modern narratives of human exceptionalism are anchored in shared perceptions of the body. Central to a modern notion of the human body is the idea that bodies are made up of pre-existing units such as cells or organs, and that this is a pre-given reality which determines our interaction with the world. This body of self-defined boundaries is also the individual who is in charge of his own or her own actions. As a challenge to this narrative, the American philosopher Donna Haraway speaks about bodies as complex and collaborate systems where multiple components interact with each other, forming cooperative qualities. Instead of individuals, he speaks about holobionts as symbiotic systems. And in the photo here, which is a really bad photo, this is visualized in the image of an ant up here on the left, holding an acacia seed during seed transport. So this image is one of those holobionts that Donna Haraway is speaking about, in which the body is actually produced through collaboration. Such a notion of bodies as cooperative systems rather than self-contained entities is currently being evoked across a diverse field of performance art. One example, even if not completely recent, is the performance Algae opera by the English-Japanese artist duo Burton and Nitta, consisting of Michael Burton and Michiko Nitta. The performance, which was staged first time in 2016, presents an opera piece as a collaborative performance between a professional opera singer, a biotech mask, which is wearing, and cultures of algae. When singing, this performer, her name is Louise Ashcroft, she breathes into the mask and thereby she feeds the algae with carbon dioxide. The tubes that connect the mask to the algae container contains fertilizers which have the effect of increasing the growth of the algae. And I have a small, it should, yeah. Yeah, so here, Here, it is the breath of the singer that builds this relation through which environment actually becomes organism and the organism becomes environment. In algae opera, the body emerges as a changing and transformable thing due to this interactivity with the environment. It thus takes place in a complex, mutually sustaining ecology of life. Another artistic project presented for this year's Domingo Festival in Madrid, which explores the boundaries of the body, is the human intervention Spa Profundo, created by the group La Cuarta Piel, the fourth skin. This project twists the idea of spa as an urban practice for bodily nourishment, wellness, regeneration. Instead of clean water, what comes out of the tubes is the mud, the surplus waste material produced in the industry of marble extraction. And in the area of Valencia, where this is made, this industry is massive. It serves markets around the world where marble is in great demand for interior decoration among the wealthy. These industries are based outside the urban centers, but by relocating the material in the urban center, La Cuarta Piel makes present this energy-intense extractivist process that are driving the Anthropocene age that we are in the 21st century. The mud, in other words, is a geological byproduct, and also at the same time it can be seen as the human-made fossils that documents that we are in an age in which humans act as a geological force. By immersing one's body into this mud, Spa Profundo establishes an encounter that again questions the status of the human body as a self-defined entity with clearly defined boundaries. When you are subdued into this toxic and vicious residue of human extraction, your body becomes blurred and merged with the fluid environment. As stated by La Cuarta Piel, the spa allows for new sensations, smells, of feeling the subsoil through your skin. The work establishes both an encounter but also a physical contact zone with the deep time of ecology. In this way, it literally blurs the distinction between the human body and the geotechno processes that produces the Anthropocene Earth. Action, the second key component of performance art or enactment, is considered an obvious part of performance-based art, but what does it actually mean to act? In the 20th century, the notion of agency as a power to impact or affect something has been dominantly centered around certain ideas of intention and a privileging of the human as a self-composed generator of meaning and mover of the world. This means that certain ideas of active and passive, of foreground and background has prevailed. Human action has, to put it in simplistic terms, been set against a background as an environment. Another term for this is anthropocentric. But this breakdown of anthropocentric ideas of agency in the age of climate emergency has opened up to a radical and fundamental rethinking of what action and enactment actually means, and following this to an unsettling of the distinction between foreground and background, between active and passive. Performance art, with its emphatic foregrounding of enactment, is a privileged field to explore what enactment might mean today. And examples of this could be the Turkish artist Murat Adaş, his project named Camouflage. In this project, Adaş reconceptualizes the notion of choreography in ways that dismisses pre-established definition of the genre as a movement of bodies that originate in and expresses human intention. Understood as camouflage, choreographical movement in Adashe's project turns into a mimetic gesture in which the edges of the subject becomes porous and loses its distinctness as an entity that acts against the world. Camouflage thereby allows for a rethinking of how we take up embodied relations to our surroundings. In these experiments, Adashe negotiates the self in relation to a surrounding. In the version here on the photo is a performance in which dancers chameleon-like blend into their surroundings in man-made urban spaces that imitate natural landscapes. And they create this sensation of being porous, of being interweaved into the world. In her performative work, the artist Vladka Horvath explores the relation between the human body and its surroundings by applying various objects as intermediates for negotiating this relation. The piece that you see here was staged in the urban outskirts of Hanover last year. A piece of paper rolled out on the ground works as a way to explore the performer's relation to the ground. What Horvath addresses here is the central role played by objects in negotiating human, non-human relations in the modern period. Objects such as instruments for measuring or gathering data or accelerating production have been key in setting up our relation to nature. So Horvath in this work uses minimal tools to embark on an unlearning from scratch how this multi-species relation may be redefined. Thereby, she sets out to reimagine our relationship to nature as co-responding rather than as a mastery. Then a third component of outdoor performance is the notion of place. Often place becomes defined as stable and a fixed thing, a stage on which activities can be shown, an outdoor venue. But against this, the British geographer Doreen Macy has argued that place is not a thing and it is not a stable structure. She proposes, contrarily, that place is an event, a thrown togetherness of bodies, human and non-human forms of life. Thus, according to Macy, place comes into being as meetings between the social and the natural. And an example of a performance work that challenges predefined ideas of place and turns it into an event is the work Forerunners by the Sami artist and activist Uttia Pieskri and Jenny Latti. Here the artists have produced traditional Sami walking sticks and placed them in a landscape. These walking sticks are carefully decorated. They function as tools used by Sami communities for indicating the places where reindeer calves have been seen in the mountains. As such, they are tools for demarcating land, but unlike modern technologies for demarcating territories and natural resources, the forest walkers are not about territories or control over land. Rather, they are about the right to have a relationship with land. By placing the stick in the landscape, the artists perform their own relationship to the land. Rather than land as commodity, as an economic asset, or as a geopolitical object, here Latti and Pieskri acknowledges how their skills belong to the land and belong to the place. Place, therefore, emerges as an event mediated by the performance itself. And the last example, it's called the project Bugdome. Bugdome is a structure created for the architecture biennial in Shenzhen in 2009 by the architectural firm Week Architects. It is built on a ruined building site between the Shenzhen City Hall and an illegal workers' camp. The design has been inspired by insects, building techniques based on local knowledge from the rural area of Guangxi, a rural province of southern China. And it has been built by a construction worker migrated from this area. Built out of bamboo, soil, cement, and gravel, the light bamboo construction stands out as a fragile structure contrasting the scale and the skyscraper-dominated downtown of Shenzhen. The cocoon structure is inspired by a wasp nest, while one of the architects stayed in an abandoned tea factory of northern Taiwan. A wasp stole the concrete that he was using to do repair of the factory roof. The architect discovered that the wasp had used the concrete to make a nest. Bug Dome thus exemplifies how various actors collaborate in enacting plays. Architecture here, you could say, participate in an event that negotiate plays. And that is after the architectural biennial. The Dome acted as an unofficial social club for illegal workers from the Chinese countryside, and it also became covered in vegetation and left as a shelter for animals and insects. So, as I've brought forward in this talk, new ideas of how to conceive bodies, enactment, and plays are being brought forward by performative art practices. They stand out as a kind of explorative research into how to sustain livable lives in the age of the Anthropocene. And this allows for new experiences of the body as entangled and codependent on other life forms. It also allows for new understandings of enactment, not as a privileged scene, but as a possibility for having an ethical relation and responsibility to the world. Also, enactment here becomes kind of intrinsically linked to this idea of relearning, trying to unlearn and relearn what it means to engage with the world. And finally, I have argued that the performative practices in the field of art today contribute to a reconceptualization of place, not as a stable thing, but as an event that becomes negotiated in between human and non-human agents. Place then could act as a potentially healing event. So when discussing what art has to do with sustainability, I will argue that it's on these very basic and explorative terms that the performative arts hold a huge potential to bring new knowledge forward about how we as humans can start to imagine and perceive our connection to the earth differently.
Signe, thanks. I don't remember the last time I was given a lecture. And that was such a relief just to sit back and be given a lecture. But yet my news industry brain formed a headline here for the breaking story. Researcher claims global heating holds a huge artistic potential. Would you say that?
I think it's not, it's about polemic. It's a bit polemic, of course, but if you look at the if you look at the 20th century, there's two things going on in parallel. So what is going on is what you call the Great Acceleration, which is actually the coming into being of the society that we have today, which is based on globalization. It's based on increased acceleration of everything. But parallel to that, you have the climate crisis emerging. So those things kind of are emerging at the same time. So I think you're right in that headline in saying that the planet has emerged but because of our emissions and our extractive living, the planet has emerged as a new reality that we must start to find out how to live in.
So you sent
a planet that we didn't know exists in a way.
You sent me back to the newsroom to work a little bit on my causality. Is that right? I'll send you over to Jakob.
Yeah.
If you're comfortable with being on stage. And then I'll invite our next speaker, Rita Marcalo, on stage and put on, give her a round of applause, please. Put on the Mentimeter now. Rita.
Hi.
Thank you for stopping by. Could we say that you're on a tour and you're stopping by in both Elsinore and Helsingborg?
We are. We
You
are
are.
on a 5-week slow travel tour.
Slow travel tour. and how would you describe yourself in brief?
I'm an artist.
You are an artist.
That's it.
In brief. Would you mind sharing with us how you live with your family and where and why? Because I loved that story when you told me.
Where I live. So I live in an eco-village in Ireland, Clough-Jordan Eco-Village. And my partner and I moved there as a kind of way to change our lifestyle and live a more sustainable life. So in a way, the kind of work that I make parallels the way that I live. My partner grows food, and we have a very simple life.
And when we met this morning at the ferry boat, you were with your group, and they are here.
They're there. Can you
They're
raise your
there.
hands?
Say hi.
They're the dancers
Yeah.
and touring producer.
They were carrying huge suitcases. I mean, like huge. And we
Yeah.
actually stowed them into a car and,
Yeah,
and
good.
brought them here. Are you going to tell us more about that in the presentation?
I
or-
am,
Okay,
yes.
so I'll.
I will talk about it.
Okay, so, but you formed this question yourself.
I did.
oh, there's something
I
wrong
didn't like
here.
the one you wrote, so I made up my own.
Okay, hang on, I'll find it. Yeah, this one.
Yeah.
Is sustainability in arts possible?
Get voting.
Yeah. So let's see what the audience says. Is it possible? So this time the question should be put right, because now it's the artist herself who actually put it. And
Wow.
it is, according to the audience.
You're going to be so disappointed in what I've got to say.
Okay. Someone says no. Okay, I'll leave it to you. You don't have a presentation, right? But
No, I'll just talk and read from my phone.
Great. Okay, so we'll just put on a back screen. Oh, would you like a picture of this? No.
If you have a picture of the show, if not.
There will be pictures.
No, not yet.
No,
not
no,
yet.
this would be the back screen.
Not yet.
So, and the presentations will be shared with you afterwards, just to say. Okay, Rita, the stage is all yours.
Okay. Just a second, I'm scrolling up. Okay, I'm ready. I will talk about art, I promise. I will talk about art, but first, I want to talk about science. Now, there is a lot of climate science around. I'm not going to bombard you with it, I promise. I will just mention two things. One, I want to talk about parts per million. And two, I want to talk about cups of coffee. Parts per million. The current carbon concentration in the atmosphere has been measured at 415 parts per million. That is a concentration on Earth that has not been experienced on Earth since 4.5 million years ago now. When I read this, I thought, well, wait a minute. What was happening on Earth 4.5 million years ago? What did the Earth look like? So apparently, it was around that time that the first human ancestors who walked on 2 feet came to be. Scientists call them, and I'm going to try and say this is in Latin, scientists call them Ardipithecus ramidus. It was hot then, really hot. Temperatures were 4 degrees higher than they are now, and sea levels were up to 40 meters higher. Cups of coffee. So you probably, when you entered this room or just outside, you got yourself a cup of coffee. And so if the picture of the planet that I just mentioned just now is indeed true, why isn't our world like that now? Why aren't sea levels 40 meters higher now? It's all explained by the cup of coffee. The coffee that you got, if you don't drink it, it will go cold. And that is because heat is absorbed in liquid, and slowly it moves from the liquid to the atmosphere. In doing so, it raises the temperature in the atmosphere. If we were all holding cups of coffee right now, it would raise the temperature of this room. Now, not enough cups of coffee for us to notice, but it would. What has happened is that the oceans have absorbed 90% of the additional energy trapped by the carbon gases. It is there already, but it's in the oceans. It's slowly being released. So we have already got a huge amount of warming already locked into our oceans, into our future. International climate agreements often talk about limiting global temperature rise to under 2 degrees, but the science says otherwise. The science says that staying under 2 degrees is no longer possible, unless, what, you want to put a blanket over the oceans? I will talk about art, I promise. I will talk about art, but first, I want to talk about sustainability. I will be basing a lot of my following comments on the work of recovering sustainability professional, Dr. Jem Bendel, recovering because he has already quit the profession. Professor Jem Bendel often talks about the current situation regarding his field, sustainability professionals, as a building on fire. When he speaks, he often says to audiences, and I'm going to say this to you now, look around the building you're in right now. Have a good look. Now look at the other people in the building. Look into their eyes. Now imagine that the building is on fire. It is hot. It's smoky. You can't breathe. It's dangerous. It's life-threatening. Now look at the entrance doors. Either one of those. Have a look. Look at the entrance doors. Watch as the fire crew come in through that door. Let's watch as the fire crew come in through that door. What do? Do they get their fire extinguishers out, radically accept that the building will burn down, and if they don't get you all out, you will die of smoke inhalation? Because that's what you would want them to do, right? Right? But they don't. The fire crew come in through that door, over there. They're wearing their special oxygen bottles and their anti-burn suits. They calmly enter the building. They get on a ladder and they put up smoke alarms. That, Bendel says, is what sustainability professionals are currently doing. As I was saying, my wife and I recently moved to an eco-village, and my wife is also a recovering sustainability professional. Over the last 5 years, I have watched her read scientific paper after scientific paper. I have watched her come home after professional development seminars on the severity of the situation. I have watched her come home from sustainability jobs where she had been, in effect, telling arts organizations to install smoke alarms in the middle of the fire. And I've gradually watched her get more and more disillusioned until she also quit the profession, and so have many of her colleagues. I will talk about art, I promise. I will talk about art, but first, I want to talk about the European Union. In 2019, Professor Bendel was invited to speak at a conference organized by the European Commission, where he presented his paper on the severity of the situation and the already locked into the oceans 4-degree temperature rise. In it, Bendel proposed that the only thing humanity can now do is accept that radical change is coming and deeply adapt to this change to minimize pain and suffering. The European Green Deal was approved a year later. Bendel spoke to the Commission. And the European Green Deal is, and I quote, a set of policy initiatives by the European Commission with the overarching aim of making the European Union climate neutral in 2050. Good. Great, even. But it should have happened 20 years ago, when climate neutrality, by then, would have prevented the additional already locked into the ocean's carbon energy. Climate neutrality in 2050, 30 years from now, means nothing else than 30 more years of carbon-captured energy into the oceans. And by 2050, I'm going to stand up, no, I'll be dead, but somebody else might stand up here talking about a locked into the ocean temperature rise of not 4 degrees higher, but much higher than that. And we are no longer going to be talking about a future world that looked like the world of our first ancestors. We're going to be talking about a future world looking like the planet did even before humanoids evolved. Perform Europe is, and I quote, an EU-funded project which aims to rethink cross-border performing arts presentation in a more inclusive, sustainable, and balanced way. Good. Great, even. And I am grateful to the program for having funded my company to tour Slow-Mo, a piece that some of you may have seen yesterday in Helsingborg. But this initiative should have happened 20 years ago. I will talk about art, I promise. I will talk about art, but first, I want to talk about hope. It's interesting when you start researching what hope is. Some fields in psychology assert that hope is a psychological defense mechanism devised by our psyches in order to cope with the realization of our own insignificance and mortality. They propose that particularly hope in the face of a reality and a reasoning which contradicts it is a delusion. It is indeed delusional, I would say, to have hope that what science is telling us will not come to pass. So I imagine that for some of you the question then might be, if not with hope, then how do we live? Who do we choose to be in a world without hope? I will talk about beyond hope. I will talk about beyond hope, but first, I want to talk about art. Slow-Mo is a dance connecting Clockjordan eco-village, where I live, in Ireland, to 5 countries in Europe. 4 in-person connections, Cyprus, Denmark, Sweden, and UK, and 1 digital connection to Italy. We undertake these connections via land, sea, and dance, so no flying. As I said before, Slow-Mo has been funded by Perform Europe, which is in turn funded by Creative Europe and co-initiated by a consortium of 5 organizations: IETM, the European Festivals Association, Circus Strada, the European Dance House Network, and Idea Consult. Slow-mo likes to think of itself as an eco-conscious and socially conscious dance. Why eco-conscious? Because it tours Europe via land and sea, so trains and ferries, and in doing so, and according to the calculations I've been able to undertake online, but mind you, I am not a sustainability professional, the carbon emissions of our tour are between 70 and 80% less than if we were flying. So I thought I'd had this great idea when I came up with slow-mo as slow travel. And then once I started to create the budget spreadsheet and looked at the costs of this model of touring, I realized that it just wasn't financially viable. Indeed, the usual model for creating and touring dance work involves, say, a 6-week creation period in a studio followed by, let's say, a 2-week tour flying. Given that our land and sea tour takes 5 weeks to go to 5 countries, that would have been an 11-week project, and that's not even considering the much higher costs of train and ferry travel, which are much higher than plane travel, and the additional accommodation and subsistence when slow traveling. But I problem solved. And so I decided to change the usual model for creating and touring dance from a successive one, meaning you make and then you tour, to a simultaneous one where I collapse the creative process into the traveling process. And that is how slow-mo has been created. We started the tour with no work created, with nothing. And we have created the work along the way as we traveled. Why socially conscious? Instant Dissidence' choreographic work is often thought of as socially engaged practice. The company works with communities, professional and non-professional performers, and it often engages in giving voice to communities in relation to particular social issues. As a socially engaged practitioner, I've often struggled with international touring because there is this lack of connection to the local, which in a way is the point. So there's this lack of connection to the local associated with international touring. International touring of dance is often about us as audience members watching dance not from our place, but from that other place. And that is good, and there's a place for it. But as a socially engaged practitioner, I am more interested in local relevance than I am in newness. So I problem solved. In problem solving this, I worked with the partners of the 5 countries slow-mo tours with to procure people from each country who would become co-creators in the work. So, how are all these aspects of slow-mo, the slow travel, the creating on the go, and the work with the co-creators, how do they all happen in practice? First, we started with the travel. We set the travel route to all the countries. Then, I asked each partner to find me people from their city. So, for instance, in the case of Denmark, people from Helsingør, find people from Helsingør who had stories to tell about those countries on the route that we first set. So, our starting country on our route to Denmark was Cyprus, and en route here or there to Denmark, we had to go through Turkey, Romania, Austria, and Germany. So whilst I was still back in Ireland, I started receiving these letters from people from Helsingør who were posting me the stories that they had of connections to Cyprus, Turkey, Romania, Austria, and Germany. So we went from Ireland to Cyprus. We applied this methodology, we performed in Cyprus, and then from Cyprus we started traveling to Denmark. Even before we left Cyprus, we created the choreographic response to the letter from the Helsingør resident who wrote to us about Cyprus. And then we took the ferry to Turkey, and then we opened the letter from the Helsingør resident who wrote to us about Turkey. And on the ferry, we created the Turkey response, and so on, until we got to Helsingør. So that's how the thing comes together. Now, this methodology actually makes slow-mo a choreographic concept rather than a choreographic work. A new iteration gets enacted en route every time. Every time we tour somewhere else, we create a new work. The final content of each iteration is different from the previous one because obviously we are responding to different letters. I will talk about art again, I promise. I will talk about art again, but first I want to talk about moving beyond hope into meaning. In 2016, I undertook a project in a refugee camp in France. Entering a makeshift refugee camp glitches your mind. It is shacks and tents and unaccompanied minors and volunteers and stolen medicine and riots and violence and incredible kindness and solidarity. It is also graffiti everywhere. On the camp, the graffiti was sometimes poetry, sometimes questions posed by the refugees to governments. But the question that I saw graffitied over and over again was, how do we live? Susan Sontag was an American philosopher who died in 2004 of leukemia. Susan and American portrait photographer Annie Leibovitz had been in a relationship, and as Susan lay dying in a hospital room at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center in Seattle, barely recognizable and unmistakably dying, Leibovitz takes photos of her dying, and then a photo of Susan after Susan dies. Photos of one's lover dying. In the final scene of Netflix movie Don't Look Up, now do not listen now if you haven't watched it and you don't want me to give away the end. That's it, Kavi is. In that final scene, a comet is about to crash onto Earth, and the world is now coming to a sudden end. The final scene of the film is of a family having a nice, quiet dinner together. The house starts to rattle, but they continue making idle conversation, keeping the topics light as their impending doom approaches. The house breaks apart in slow motion, and the world ends, and everyone dies. Man's Search for Meaning is a 1946 book by psychologist Viktor Frankl, chronicling his experiences as a prisoner in Nazi concentration camps during World War II. In Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl describes the psychotherapeutic method he evolved during his time in the concentration camp, and introduces his ideas of meaning and his theory of logotherapy. Logotherapy is based on the premise that the primary motivational force of an individual is to find a meaning in life. How do we live, graffitied all over a refugee camp? Photos of one's lover dying. Having a family dinner before the meteor hits. These are not acts of hope, but they are powerful acts of meaning-making. To me, slow-mo is so much more than what I said above, an eco-conscious and socially conscious choreographic concept, blah, blah, blah. To me, slow-mo is an act of meaning-making, a way of consciously holding it all of it at once. The creativity, the connection between us and audiences, the connection between each other as company members. The joy, the tiredness, the exhilaration after performing, the frustration, the meetings with strangers as we travel, the laughter, the silliness, the grumpiness, the lack of funding to do it properly, all in the knowledge of impending catastrophic climate and societal collapse. And I will now play for you one of our Instagram stories as a window into slow-mo, not as the work of art, but as the act of meaning-making, which is trying to hold it all. Do I play? I do it?
Sorry.
It's okay. Missed the timing, but no. Go back. Sorry. Let's take that cue. An act of meaning making. Here we go.
It's about damn time. In a minute, I'ma need a sentimental man or woman to pump me up. Feeling fussy, walking in my Balenciennes, trying to break.
Working commuters, most poorly paid, contrasted with the foreigners traveling just for pleasure.
And that's it. Thank you.
Rita, thank you. And if I promised you a break before lunch, I'm not able to actually fulfill that promise. There is lunch in 20 minutes time, and there is a sufficient break there. There are no questions asked digitally, so let's skip that part and then just have an analog conversation. So please come forward with your comments or your questions. I, of course, have questions, I'd say. And maybe you'd like to comment on